Here's a question nobody asks you at your retirement party, right after you've blown out the candles on the sheet cake and your coworker Dave has had one too many sparkling ciders. Nobody leans over and says, "Hey, you sure you thought this through?" No. They hand you a card signed by 30 people you barely talk to, a gift card to Red Lobster, and a balloon that says you did it. And then they send you home. Forever. And that's where things get interesting. Because a few years into retirement, sometimes sooner, a whole lot of people realize they made some decisions that they absolutely positively cannot undo. Decisions that seemed perfectly logical at the time. Financial advisors nodded along to, spouses agreed with, and the internet said they were fine. And yet, here they are. Today, we're talking about the decisions most retirees regret when it's too late to fix them. And I want you to watch this video before you become one of those people, because some of these mistakes are completely avoidable. And some of them, well, they're the kind that echo for decades. Let's get into it. Mistake number 1, claiming Social Security too early. Now look, I get it. You're 62, you've been working since you were 16, your knees hurt, your back is staging a formal protest. You have been absolutely waiting for this moment. And then somebody tells you that you can start collecting Social Security right now, today, and you think, yeah, that sounds great. Let's do that. Here's the problem. If your full retirement age is 67 and you claim it's 62, your benefit gets permanently reduced by about 30%. Not temporarily, not until you hit 67, permanently, for the rest of your life. Now, let's put real numbers on this. Say your full benefit at 67 is $2,000 a month. If you claim at 62, you're now getting roughly $1,400 a month. That's $600 less every single month. And if you wait until 70, you'd be getting $2,480 a month instead. That's a $1,080 difference every single month compared to claiming at 62. Over a 20-year retirement, that gap becomes absolutely enormous. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, the kind of money that determines whether you're comfortable or whether you're rationing your prescriptions at 83. That's not a joke. That's a real thing that happens. Now, there are legitimate reasons to claim early. If you have serious health issues, if you have no other income, if you've done the math and the break-even point just doesn't make sense for your situation, those are real conversations to have. We have done a whole video on why retirees are claiming at 62. Check it out. But most people, they claim early because they don't fully understand what they're giving up. They see the check and they want the check. And 15 years later, they deeply, deeply wish they had waited. Don't be that person. Mistake number 2, underestimating how long retirement actually is. Here's something wild that I want you to sit with for a second. If you retire at 65 and you live to your late 80s and even 90s, which is increasingly common, by the way, because medicine is relentlessly refusing to let us die, you will spend 25 years in retirement. 25 years. That's longer than most careers. That's longer than most marriages. That's longer than some countries have existed. And yet, a shocking number of people plan for retirement like it's going to last maybe 10 years. They do the math based on some vague, pessimistic estimate of their lifespan, usually based on when their dad passed, and they think, okay, I've got enough to last until 80, I'm good. And then they turn 81, and the money's getting scary. And suddenly, a retirement that was supposed to be relaxing has become a full-time anxiety spiral. This is called longevity risk. It's one of the most underappreciated risks in personal finance, and it affects every single decision you make. How much you spend, how you invest, when you claim Social Security, whether you buy an annuity. Here's the thing. You need to plan for a longer retirement than you think. If you're a healthy 65-year-old, there's a real chance you'll live into your late 80s or even 90s, and your spouse might outlive you by a decade. Run your numbers to 95. Yes, really. Better to have money left over than to run out at 87 and have to move in with your kid and their 3 dogs. Plan long. It's the only rational approach. Mistake number 3, spending too much in the early years. Ah, yes, the go-go years trap. And I say trap affectionately, because honestly, spending on experiences and travel early in retirement is not inherently wrong. You should enjoy your money. That's the whole point. The problem is when people dramatically overspend in years 1 through 5, the exciting, energetic early retirement years, without accounting for the fact that the money has to last for decades. Here's what happens. You retire. You feel liberated. You book the Alaskan cruise, then the European river cruise, then the Costa Rican eco-lodge thing your friend Cheryl wouldn't stop talking about. You renovate the kitchen because, hey, now you're home all day and you deserve a nice kitchen. You buy the RV. You help the kids with a down payment. You join the club. None of these things are unreasonable individually. Together, they can blow a massive hole in your retirement finances that you spend the next 20 years trying to patch. The research is pretty clear on this. The sequence of spending matters. Spending heavily in the first decade of retirement before your portfolio has had time to compound and grow is significantly more damaging than spending the same amount later. A good rule of thumb? In your early retirement years, keep your withdrawal rate conservative. Give your investments room to breathe. Build in a cushion. You can always loosen up later if things are going well. You cannot go back in time and unspend the money. Mistake number 4, ignoring long-term care. Roughly 70% of people turning 65 today will need some form of long-term care at some point in their lives. 70%. That's not a fringe scenario. That's most people. And long-term care is expensive. A private room in a nursing home averages over $100,000 a year in most parts of the country. Home health aides can run $50,000 to $80,000 a year. And these costs aren't going down. Medicare covers very little of this. I want to be really clear about that because it's a common misconception. Medicare will cover short-term skilled nursing care under specific circumstances. It will not cover the years of custodial care that many people ultimately need. The consequences of ignoring this are brutal. We're talking about people burning through their entire retirement savings they spent decades building in 3 or 4 years of long-term care costs. We're talking about spouses having to impoverish themselves to qualify their partner for Medicaid. We're talking about adult children having to quit their jobs to become caregivers. Long-term care insurance is one option. It's gotten more expensive, but it still makes sense for a lot of people. Hybrid life/LTC policies are another option. Self-funding if you have significant assets. Medicaid planning if appropriate for your situation. But doing nothing and hoping it won't happen to you, that's not a plan. That's just hope. And hope is not a financial strategy. Mistake number 5, not updating the estate plan. Raise your hand if you have a will from 2003 that still names your college roommate as your executor. No judgment, you're in good company. Estate planning is one of those things that people do once, feel very responsible about, and then never think about again. And then life happens. People get divorced, kids grow up, grandkids arrive, people pass away, including sometimes the people you named as your beneficiaries or your executor. And your old documents just sit there, silently causing future problems. Here's what gets people. Beneficiary designations on retirement accounts and life insurance policies override your will. This is one of the most important things I will ever say on this channel. Your IRA, your 401k, your life insurance, those go to whoever is named on the beneficiary form. The form wins. So, if you got divorced 20 years ago and never updated the beneficiary on your old 401k, your ex-spouse might legally inherit that money, even if you've been remarried for 15 years, even if your will says something completely different. The form wins. Update your estate documents. Update your beneficiary designations. Do it now. Do it every few years. And when major life events happen, marriage, divorce, death, new grandchildren, do it again. It's not fun. Nobody wants to spend a Saturday afternoon reviewing their durable power of attorney, but it is genuinely important. And the cost of not doing it can fall entirely on the people you love most. Mistake number 6, keeping too much in cash or too little in growth assets. This one cuts both ways, and I want to talk about both directions. First, the people who retire and move everything into cash or CDs because they're scared of the stock market. I understand this instinct completely. You've spent decades building this pile of money and you do not want to watch it evaporate in a market downturn. That fear is rational and human. But here's the problem. If you're retiring at 65 and you need your money to last 30 years, you cannot afford to have it all sitting in low-yield accounts being slowly devoured by inflation. Inflation is patient. It doesn't need to hurry. It'll just quietly erode your purchasing power year after year until that cash pile buys significantly less than it does today. A 3% inflation rate cuts your purchasing power in half over 24 years. So if you're 65 and you live to 89, that $500,000 in cash has the purchasing power of $250,000 in today's dollars by the time you're done with it. That's not safety, that's slow-motion wealth erosion. Now, the other direction. People who stay too aggressive, too concentrated, too equity-heavy, without a buffer for short-term expenses. Sequence of returns risk is real. If the market drops 40% in year 2 of your retirement and you're forced to sell assets to live on, you lock in those losses and permanently impair your portfolio's recovery. The answer is balance. A well-constructed retirement portfolio has enough in growth assets to outpace inflation over time and enough in stable, liquid assets to cover expenses without being forced to sell during downturns. It's not complicated in theory. It does require intentional planning. Work with a fee-only financial advisor. Build a real asset allocation. Don't wing it. Mistake number 7, retiring without a sense of purpose. Okay, we've talked money for a while. Let's talk about something that might actually matter more. A lot of retirees are completely blindsided by the emotional and psychological transition out of work, not because they loved their job, a lot of them didn't, but because work provided things they never thought about consciously: structure, identity, social connection, a reason to get up in the morning. And then retirement arrives, and suddenly, there's no structure. The calendar is empty. The phone stops ringing. The sense of being needed, of being someone, it's just gone. This sounds abstract until you see it, and I've seen it. Smart, successful, financially secure people who were genuinely miserable in retirement because they never figured out what they were retiring to, only what they were retiring from. The research on this is sobering. Social isolation in retirement is linked to significantly worse health outcomes, physical and mental. Depression rates among retirees are higher than most people realize, and men in particular often struggle with the identity shift more than they'll ever admit. The fix is not complicated, but it does require intention. Before you retire, ideally years before, start building the life you want to live in retirement. Develop hobbies, invest in relationships, find volunteer work or part-time work you actually care about. Get involved in your community. Have a plan for what your days will look like. Because retirement without purpose isn't freedom. It's just a lot of unstructured time with a slowly ticking financial clock, and that's nobody's idea of a good life. Mistake number 8, not communicating with your spouse. This might be the most quietly devastating mistake on this list. Couples who have been together for decades often assume that they're on the same page about retirement. They have never actually sat down and explicitly discussed what they each want, what they each fear, how much they plan to spend, where they want to live, whether one of them wants to work part-time, or who's going to manage the finances if the other one can't. And then retirement arrives, and suddenly they are home together all the time, every day. And the gaps in their expectations, gaps that were invisible when they were both working, become very, very visible. I have talked to couples who had fundamentally incompatible visions of retirement, and neither of them knew it until they were already there. One wanted to travel constantly, the other wanted to stay home and garden. One thought they were going to live on $60,000 a year, the other had mentally budgeted for $120,000. These are not small differences. These are life-altering incompatibilities that absolutely must be discussed before retirement, not during. Talk to your spouse. Have the awkward conversations. Get a financial planner in the room if that helps. Figure out what you each want and find the overlap, because the cost of not doing this to your finances and to your marriage can be severe. Retirement is one of the most significant financial and life transitions you will ever make, and unlike a lot of mistakes in life, retirement mistakes are uniquely hard to fix. You can't unretire and rebuild your career. You can't unclaim Social Security. You can't unspend 20 years of savings. Which is exactly why this stuff matters so much. Not to scare you, but to give you the chance to get this right while you still can. If this video helped you, do me a favor and share it with someone who's within 10 years of retirement, because the earlier people have these conversations, the better their outcomes, every time. I'll see you in the next one.